Hi guys, it's Rick. I'm back in for another AFI 100 film challenge. I'm challenging myself to watch all 100 films on the original list. Now, the film I'm about to show you is the most controversial film in history. From multiple lists it's popped up on, it's always number one. I've never seen it anywhere else but number one on those lists, and I've never seen it until today. And I wanted to, at least now I know why. So we have DW versus Birth of a Nation. Now, the gist of the film is it follows a northern and southern family before and after the Civil War, into the Reconstruction period. Released on February 8th, 1915, directed by D.W. Griffith. And up until that time period, films weren't long. 20 minutes, usually 25, 30, maybe 30 minutes. But I mean, they weren't long. So D.W. Griffith wanted to do something that no one's ever done. He wanted to make a full-length motion picture. And this movie's over 3 hours long. 3 hours and 15 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. It's an incredibly long film. It was directed for the screenplay by Thomas Dixon Jr. for the 1905 novel known The Klansman. It was actually named The Klansman all the way up before its premiere, where they ended up changing the name to Birth of a Nation. When it was released, it was well received, but not by everybody, of course, because of the subject matter. You've got actors in blackface in here. You have the Ku Klux Klan portrayed as heroes in the second part. So it had a lot of dark steps, and is one of the most hated fan movies in history. But it broke a lot of new ground, that no one ever talks about. They actually, where most movies were really cheap to go to back in the day, I couldn't find what a ticket price was. But for this movie, they charged $2 a ticket, which was a pretty big deal. And because at the time it had one of the highest budgets in film history, which was over $100,000. But it ended up making over 50 to 100 million at the box office. I mean, when people first saw it, I mean, like I said, some were offended. Some people in the crowd actually stood up and cheered at the premiere in LA. I mean, and being a 12-reel film, it was the longest film ever at that point, which I had mentioned earlier. Shown in two parts with an intermission. First movie to have a musical score. They actually had an orchestra portraying. Again, this is something that would become standard going forward, but it didn't happen until that point. It provided close-ups, fade-outs, and it had a carefully staged battle sequence with hundreds of extras made to look like thousands. And they did that using smoke bombs and just smoke in general, because you could hide. You could make a lot look like, or a little look like a lot. It was a very smart move on that end. It was also one of the first film ever to be shown for the White House, for the judges of the Supreme Court and Congress. And we're used to, like, a movie comes out and it goes right to theaters. It wasn't like that back then, because there wasn't a lot of theaters. You had to go far out or to the big cities. This was one of the first films to be shown extensively across America, and that's why it became such a big hit. The men who advertised and publicized it, some of the things that they did with, like, posters and marketing would become standards going forward. It was the very first blockbuster film, making anywhere between 50 to 100 million from research that I've read, and it was actually the number one film in the States from 1915 to 1939 until Gone with the Wind knocked it off the top. Now, a movie, like I said, it upset the NAACP. It was banned in some areas. Some of those bans were overturned. But I mean, because it was incredibly controversial. I mean, you've got the Ku Klux Klan's heroes. I mean, you've got white actors directed in blackface as slaves. It was not a completely. It was not. It got as much good publicity as it got bad publicity during that era. As far as my opinion on the film, I like the technical achievements. I like what it pulled off. The war scenes were really cool. Seeing, the battle sequences and things. The storyline wasn't too bad. It's though it is a, I could see where people would believe it's a very racist film because of the subject matter. I mean, it is, in this day and age, this, I don't, well, I mean, not even this day and age, a film like this, it has never been accepted since the beginning of its first beliefs. Actually, D.W. Griffith, when he followed it up with another film called Intolerance to try to make amends for this movie, even though it did make a lot of money. And when they revised the AFI list, I mean, the controversy is still here. It was booted and replaced by Intolerance. So, I mean, it is definitely one of those films that is that it has had a major impact since it came in. I can't think of another movie offhand. Maybe Song of the South. I mean, that was a big one that was controversial. Movies like Salo. So, I mean, there are a lot of controversial films, but I don't think anything tops this one and what it did and achieved. So, there's been lots of books written about it. There was a remake, well, in name only, and taken from a different perspective in 2016. But I mean, it's definitely an interesting film that I think you ought to see it just to see the controversialness of it and some of the shots that, hey, the reason we have those shots today, the fade outs, the close-ups and things like that is because of this movie. So you got to look for the good and the bad. I mean, there's a lot of bad here, but I mean, there were some technical achievements that were pretty impressive. So that's what I'll say about it. Is it a great picture? Only for its achievements, for its controversialness. I mean, it's not something that you would seek out for that. I mean, it needs seeing for the controversy. Because, I mean, who isn't interested in controversy? That's probably what fueled it, why it made so much money as it did. But, I mean, I think everyone should see it once just to say they saw it, so they can have a better understanding of the film or what it is. I mean, it's amazing that a movie that is over 100 years old, we're still talking about it this day. So, it did make an impact. And though there were no awards won for it or anything, it was put into the National Film Library. Is considered culturally significant. So it definitely did make an impact. But all right. So I mean, if you want to see it for the technical achievements, and just shake your head at the rest of the stuff. That's about all I can really say. All right. Well, that's it for this review. Hope you enjoyed it, and as always, go watch a movie.